to let you lead on this. I mean, where do you want to start? I mean, what do you?
Well, it's funny because I had just opened up, just because I haven't looked at it in a while. I was adapting Flood,
Right.
just as a informal practice because I'd never worked on a screenplay before, except for a TV screenplay.
Oh, that's right. You
for
were
a
telling
show.
me you were doing that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, I want to reread that, and I'm like, oh, it's the book, but it's in screenplay format. It's interesting. So it's funny that you're like, hey, you want to talk about that stuff? Yeah. So I've also been working on where is it? So this game, Chris O'Neill and Ninth Level Games, he has a whole series now. I bought all of them.
Right, you told me about
it's a fantasy game. Yeah, it's using a system he designed called Polymorph, which is very clever.
Mm-hmm.
I think you would appreciate it. And I'm adapting the stuff I worked on for Nightwaves to work as a Polymorph game. Just because it's so direct and it's so
now was this
it's very
was this kind of like a mental exercise, or are you sort
yes.
of okay? So you're still thinking of Nightwaves as your own game that needs its own design, but
Yes.
based on the not going to say how many years we've been talking about this. So
yeah, it's a mental exercise, but it's also like, oh, I could see this be like, why not have a multiplicity of games? If the system will work for the game, why not try it?
Sure.
And it's good. It's good for me. It keeps me entertained. So
the interesting thing for me is that it seems like you're kind of what's the word I want? You're sort of experimentally bouncing around. Okay, let's try a screenplay. Okay, let's try this. What is this topic? Yeah. And it's not.
Yeah. So
and the topic. I mean, you and I, we've been talking about Vax since we met, and then you did like a full read through. And coincidentally, I had done kind of a spot read through of a few different things that I hadn't read for a long time. And it's not just Vax, it's a sort of a confluence of a few other media, but they always kind of slip off of genre. I've never read anything that's so genre and yet is itself and isn't the genre.
Yeah.
Because
we're talking about crime fiction.
Right.
Kind of neo-noir crime fiction. That's like the big umbrella.
It is, but there's also sort of the cinematic version, which is the kind of not going to play by the rules detective / gangster / crime movies.
Yeah.
And it's before Hong Kong cinema really traveled, or at least it's before Hong Kong cinema was imitated in a dedicated way, which is a 90s thing.
Yes.
Right? So it's before that. I mean, I actually saw a couple of either Sui Hark or John Woo movies in the mid late 1987 in Chicago, but none of us really knew what we were looking at.
Yeah.
So
I found out about
they kind of crashed into my mind, and I was like, that was a wild ride, and I really am not sure what I saw.
So there was a show. There was a British show. It was a little series called Incredibly Strange Films.
Right.
And the host is a British host. I can't remember his name, but he every episode was about a different filmmaker or group of filmmakers or genre. And it's how I learned about Peter Jackson's bad taste in Meet the Feebles.
Right.
It's how I learned about. At that point, I already knew Sam Raimi, but it introduced me most importantly to John Woo, Shui Hark, and Jackie Chan.
Right. And that would have been really.
That was like around 1989, It was between in 1989 and 1991, around there.
Right.
And I became obsessed with The Killer.
We all did. With me, it was The Bride with White Hair.
I didn't get into that one.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well,
did not get into. I wasn't into the fantasy.
Right. Well, for me, A Better Tomorrow. I know The Killer is a classic, and I know
Better Tomorrow 2.
Yeah, but for me, A Better Tomorrow, the first one is just like a rock. Well, anyway,
I would say even the second one is even better for me. But yeah, both those movies are great.
Let's take a look at those, and let's think about not Hard Boiled, which I consider to be sort of a now we got it, now we're going to dial up to 11 kind of thing. And let's definitely not do the sort of American perspective on John Woo, etc., as a sort of hip retrospective late 90s thing. Let's not do that. Right. And I'm thinking about just the rawness of those two A Better Tomorrow movies. And then we talked about a couple of others. We talked about To Live and Die in LA. And we also talked about, damn it, what's the name of it? Something.
Streets of Fire?
No, I'm talking about the John Boorman movie from the 70s that we talked about. The one that's...
wait, John Boorman?
Yeah, it stars Lee Marvin.
Oh yeah, the one that Payback. It's not Payback.
I know. Yeah, it's based on.
It's Point Blank. It's Point Blank.
Right.
Point Blank.
Yeah.
Because Grosse Point Blank is a parody,
I know. Yeah.
Or not a parody, but a riff on the title.
So it's a it's a way of. I mean, none of these movies really obey the rules of crime action movies as they existed at the time they were made. Right. None of them do. And the same thing goes with Vax's fiction. Yeah, it's about a hard-boiled detective in the gruesome, mean streets of New York and all the rest of it. But you quickly realize that you are not in the right head.
Right.
And
he's going to put you in.
Right. And you're not even in the right city. That, his New York is, a whole New York that is not in Hollywood. And at least especially at the time. And it's not written, I mean, you could take every detail and it just doesn't follow the rules of what this stuff is supposed to be. And it's funny too, because we could say gritty, and yeah, I guess it's gritty, whatever that means. You almost want to say realistic until you realize that nothing in it is realistic in the slightest.
Yeah. I mean, his stuff is realistic. His stuff is very,
I mean, I don't get it.
It's very, and I asked him about this because I talked to him about this at a signing, and I was like, your characters are pretty over the top. It's very like Doc Savage and his like band of like companions who are all like.
They're all amazing at what they do, right?
They're all amazing. I mean, yeah, exactly. And so are Burke's family.
The Mole and everybody. Max the Simon. It's like Max the Simon eats Batman for breakfast. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And I referenced Batman. I said, they're almost like, because he also did a Batman novel.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it. I'm spacing. Oh, The Ultimate Evil.
Right.
But I said to him, your characters are seemingly superhuman. They're almost like superheroes. It's almost like you have your own comic book superheroes in your book. And he said in that voice, I'm not going to try to do his voice, but he said in his voice, which is this gravelly New York.
Man, it is, yeah.
It's so him. He goes, well, let me tell you something. All those people in all my books are based on people I know in real life. And I don't doubt him because some of the stories he has.
Yeah, I don't doubt him in many ways. But I see both of your points,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like they're really over the top.
A refutation of your point. It's something too about the. There's definitely he's always been overt about what he considers to be truly evil in the actual world.
And that's based on that is based on reality.
Based on all of his work with kids, everything. I mean, it's based on his own personal experiences, the works. Yeah. And so that's why I think there's something often authentic. I mean, if we want to be critical, I will not claim every one of his stories and books is, I think, successful. But that doesn't matter. We're talking about a huge body of work and that's fine. But the thing I'm getting at is that the authenticity of that, failed or successful in its presentation, is always there. I mean,
absolutely.
And so when he does something fairly over the top-ish, at least in the better parts or things that I consider to be the most exciting or most important books or whatever, the ones I like. They are, there are about stuff that makes the over the top stuff work.
Yeah.
So he once described his work as a stalking horse. He wanted to draw you in with all the tough talk and the hot babes and the action and the sex and kind of the tough guyness of it all, right? He wanted to kind of draw you in with that, and then he says, "Now we're going to talk about something important. Now that you bought my book, right? Now that I have you,
well,
you fool."
His first book was a textbook about juvenile incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally a textbook, and he said those who read it thought it was amazing. All 4 of them,
right? Exactly.
But he's like, if I'm going to get my message across, I can't be writing academic books. I need to write fiction, and this kind of fiction.
And of course, his first
kind of
attempt
men's
at that
adventure magazine.
His first attempt at that has to be A Bomb Built in Hell, which is one of the most harrowing things you could possibly read, ever.
Yeah. So it's amazing.
Now, with this in mind, with these, and clearly Vax is a sort of dramatic example of it, but the attempts we see in cinema, and I'm pretty sure we can find, I've always sought whatever it is called in all of my pop culture, and I can certainly point out a couple of fantasy and science fiction writers who have kind of gone there or been that, and we've got sort of a scattered body of work, and it's hard to lump them because by definition they're deeply personal visions, right? So what can a role-playing game do? Okay, here's my nightmare. Here's my nightmare. The world of Burke.
Right.
Fate.
Yeah.
And that's my nightmare. That a Fate version of this kind of content, which basically reduces it to a bunch of tropes, and the play experience is nothing but massaging one another to stay genre faithful.
Right.
And that's what play is. And it's sort of the modern version of the GURPS book, which we all know everybody treated as encyclopedias.
Right. It was great before Wikipedia.
Yeah, exactly. And so, if you want to know about pirates, you pull out GURPS Pirates because somebody did a little piece for you. And there's some quantitative annotation that makes us pretend that we're talking about role-playing.
Right.
And so, that now we have, Fate that is basically, kind of, I want to be a fan of this genre, and I'm told it's cool or I know something about it. So let's read this genre book, which is, kind of a genre book. There's nothing else. So here it's more kind of, if I may say so, more the sorcerer approach, which is you want to do it. You like this stuff? Do it. Do that yourself. Can you? Right? Do you have it in you? And it's kind of like what I'm doing with Vigil, where the first question is, is your hate pure? You can't play Vigil unless you answer the question, is your hate pure? Right? If you can't name that, then why are you playing a super vigilante in the first place? Go away.
Right.
You can't. This is not a costume you put on. This is not a Halloween costume. This is not a Daredevil fan, celebration party.
Right.
You can't just put on your Daredevil suit and like everyone, it's not cosplay. You're not cosplaying Daredevil. So, is your hate pure? Who would you play if it were? And so it's kind of like that for you, right? With this? You're more playful about it. In the materials you've shown me, it's more playful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I don't want somebody to play, I don't want what happens in the Burke novels to go down in a game.
Oh, okay. Go on.